Okay, let's watch this lady.
Should transgender teens transition? This rather personal question occupies a prominent place in the American culture war. On the one side, you have people claiming that it's a socially contagious fad among the brainwashed woke who want to mutilate your innocent children. On the other side, there are those saying that it's saving the lives of minorities who've been forced to stay in the closet for too long. And then there are normal people like you and I who think both sides are crazy. And could someone please summarize the facts in simple words, which is what I'm here for. So what's going on? Is it true that the number of teenagers who identify as transgender is rising rapidly? What's gender-affirming care? Does it work? And why are some countries like Sweden, Finland, and the UK rolling back gender-affirming treatments for children? That's what we'll talk about today. The vast majority of humans are born with an unambiguous biological sex that's either male or female. While there are some intersex conditions, they're rare. For the most part, biological sex in humans is fairly simple. People with XX chromosomes are biologically female, have ovaries and grow breasts. People with XY chromosomes are biologically male, have testicles and leave the toilet seat up. It's more difficult for some fish who can change their sex, but there are few fish among my subscribers, so with apologies to all fish who may be watching, I'll leave this complication aside.
I'm getting some weird vibes on this lady for a time now. I know she's a physics PhD, but she's not even with some subjects like statements like normal people like you and I think both sides are crazy. Yeah, we'll see what she does. I'm half expecting because the problem with this is what I like about me. This is why I'm so special, okay? And I wish there were more people like me, okay? There are some times where I can see that I think mainstream opinion gets something a little bit wrong, but it doesn't make me anti-mainstream on every single fucking topic. And I feel like that happens to everybody. So obviously she's opposed to some of the way that physics research has gone. So I don't really care about her opinion as much. I'm kind of watching this video to see, is she about to be oh, the trans stuff is fake, we're being indoctrinated, blah, blah, blah. Or is she somebody that can have she says that well, the establishment is wrong on this thing sometimes, but here's my reasonable take on things. Yeah, I don't know. Because it seems as soon as somebody finds one thing that's establishment that they disagree with, all of a sudden they become oh, well, here's every single way that every single congressman is actually fucking Jeffrey Epstein's enslaved girls and the FDA is evil. Yeah, I don't know, but we'll see.
Now let's talk about this self-identification as transgender. The share of people who identify as transgender in the developed world is typically around 0.5%. For example, in the 2021 UK government census, about 0.5% of people older than 16 answered no to the question of whether their gender is the same as their sex registered at birth. The US Census Bureau did a similar survey in 2021 and saw 0.6% identifying as transgender. A 2021 census in Canada among people aged 15 and older saw 0.19% identify as transgender and 0.15% as non-binary. Curiously, though, the fraction is considerably higher among teenagers than among adults. In the United States, the number of gender clinics which treat children has grown from basically none to more than 100 in 15 years. Just like the wrinkles in my face, a good reminder that correlation is not causation. Curiously enough, the big bulk of the increase comes from children assigned female at birth, wishing to transition to male. This is weird because in earlier generations, the ratio was the other way round, or approximately equal. The same thing has been observed in the Netherlands, in Spain, in the UK, Canada, Sweden, and is also the case in the USA. Most of the increase in gender dysphoria reports comes from girls. Pretty much no one questions this. What's more controversial is the question whether the typical age of girls to report gender dysphoria is also changing, and if so, why? In 2018, the American physician Lisa Littman argued in a paper based on survey results among parents that the girls being referred to gender clinics in recent years are different from those of earlier generations. They show an onset of gender dysphoria.
This is an interesting question that I don't even know who you would begin to ask, because asking a trans man would be hard and asking a cis woman would be hard. My understanding is that it feels like female puberty, I think, is weirder than male puberty, I think. Because I feel like I feel like as a man, there are like kind of weird things. You have to start wearing deodorant. You start getting hairy. Your dick grows a bit. Your voice can squeak a little bit. And it's kind of like, you know, that's like the negative parts. But for women, imagine if the boob thing is a really big deal. Like, the fact that people can see boobs and everything, like if your boobs come in early, it's really fucking weird. If your boobs don't come in enough and you've got small boobs, it's really fucking weird. If periods and everything are really fucking weird. The hormone fluctuations and everything that are involved with periods are really fucking weird. I feel like there's a lot more physical outward presentation for women that's pressured, which also like makes all this difficult as well, you know? Like, one thing I'd be curious about is like, I feel like every woman that goes through puberty, or a lot of them, probably have like some, we can call it like dysphoria related to female puberty. How do you know, how could you tell now with the trans stuff, like, oh God, maybe I'm trans and I just want to be a man? Like, I feel like probably every single woman at one point going through puberty probably felt that way. Like, this sucks. I wish I was just male. Like, I feel like I'm not like, I feel like it'd be a really difficult thing to sort out with like trans stuff being a thing, you know? Like, how do you figure out what's dysphoric versus what's just like puberty's awkward, you know?
Another issue that physicians have brought up is that many of the adolescent children assigned female at birth who are now presenting with gender dysphoria.
I think there is a link to undiagnosed autism in girls. I'm autistic and mother of 3 diagnosed kids. 2 girls. Identity isn't forming in as girls due to masking.
Yeah, maybe. I'm still not even sure how I feel about autism, but yeah, I don't know.
Psychological problems too. So what happens to those children who are diagnosed with gender dysphoria? The treatment regime is called gender-affirming care. It starts with the child adopting a new name and pronouns that fit their chosen gender. They begin to change their appearance and join groups that belong to that gender. For example, if you want to be a girl, you join the physics club. At the age of 10 or so, they begin taking puberty blockers, which are drugs which prevent the onset of puberty and stop the development of secondary sexual characteristics.
What do you mean by that? Well, like in terms of like, is autism a disease? Is it a collection of diseases? Is it even like, should we even talk about like the mind as like being neurotypical? Is that like a weird way to even approach things? Like, I don't know, it's kind of complicated.
The American healthcare system isn't exactly known for being affordable, so you won't be surprised to hear that the costs for gender-affirming care in the US can be substantial.
It's probably not as severe / common, but I think adults do that to little boys too. You're gonna be such a lady killer, etc. Dude, I used to always, anytime somebody would say anything like that to Nathan, I talked to his mom about this a lot too. One of the grossest fucking things, I hate it. Never let anybody do this to my kid when I was around. Is whenever little kids hang out with each other, when everybody's like, oh, look, is that your little girlfriend? Is that your little boyfriend? I think it is the cringiest, most gross fucking thing to do. I hate that with a fiery fucking passion. I hate that. It's so gross. Like when Nathan was like 6 or 7, or like an aunt or uncle, like, oh, is that his little girlfriend? It's like, no, they're 6 or 7. Like there was so many times in my life where I was so close, but like it would have gotten me excommunicado from the whole family, from my kid's mom's family. Like, because anytime somebody says that, like, oh, is that his little girlfriend? Like, my temptation would be like, oh, yeah, like, he's going to go with his 6-year-old later. What the fuck kind of question is that? That was such an inappropriate, disgusting thing to say, you fucking bitch. Don't talk about my kid that way. But obviously, that would be way too edgy. And it would be... I think I'd probably get kicked out of the house. But it's such a gross thing to say. They're little kids. Let them go fucking play without being weird about it. God, I hate that. Fuck, it's so gross. Anyway.
Costs for hormone therapy are typically $100 to $200 a month.
It seems pretty innocent. I don't think it's not innocent at all. It's parents fucking with kids for their own amusement. It's not innocent. It's parents that are playing games and fucking with kids because they think it's cute and funny. But it's probably not healthy, or it's probably not positive for a child's development. Why would you make them feel weird? Why would you make them feel like guilty or install like weird? Like, let them play. When the kids are like 5, 6, 7 years old, they're not really thinking generally like girlfriend, boyfriend shit. All of that is coming from adults. Like up until kids are probably, I don't know, 9, 10, 11, 12, like in that kind of age range, then they're starting to develop more and they're getting like the dynamics of like boyfriend, girlfriend shit, or like looking at girls or boys in different ways or whatever. But when the kids are like 6, 7, 8 years old, it's fucking weird and creepy to be like, oh, is that your little girlfriend? Oh, is that your boy? Like, you're just making them feel weird about it for no fucking reason. And kids are smart. They pick up on that shit really easily. Like, when parents start making jokes and comments like that, they start looking at each other like, it's so fucking weird. Like, I think that's so gross. Just like let the kids play. Just like let them play. Destiny, you are contributing to hypersensitive bullshit with that take. It's all playful and kids don't understand it. Ugh. Okay. I'm assuming you're not a parent, but you could be, because parents are fucking retarded too, okay? Kids are very fucking smart, okay? They learn a whole language in a couple years, from having no fucking brain at all to entering the world to being able to speak a language in a few, okay? Kids are very perceptive. They're very intelligent. They pick up on a lot of things. Nothing is more retarded to me. You'll get these stupid fucks walking around who will be like, oh, my dog can tell whenever I'm sad because as soon as I come in the house without even me having to say anything, he's cuddling with me. And then these motherfuckers will be like, oh, I don't think our kids can hear us screaming at each other in the other room and then walking with pissed off looks on our face to put in bed. Like, bro, your kids are very receptive. Like, we're social creatures. We learn by analysis or we learn by socialization or whatever. Like, when you're doing weird or creepy shit, you're making jokes like that, your kid can tell what's going on. Like, kids are very smart. Like, watch a kid. Just look at a kid and watch them learn. They're very, very, very perceptive to things like that. Just don't make it weird. It's not about being sensitive or weird. Why would you put the idea of 6-year-olds? That's weird. And you're a pedophile, okay? You're gross. Stop it.
Side effects include, but are not limited to, weight gain, headaches, reduced growth, and a significant decrease in bone density. The effects of those drugs.
You're right. I was like 6, and I remember when being felt
I saw
weird.
a video of a toddler crying, "DC, she wanted a boyfriend." I thought the implications were disgusting.
Jesus. When my parents said similar shit, my grandma used to say that shit. There was this girl that used to be in the yard next to us. I remember her name was Natasha. God, and I remember my grandma pressured me so. She's like, oh, Steve, you need to go ask her to be your girlfriend. And I was like 8 years old. And I'm like, okay, grandma. It was just like, looking back, it was like the cringiest, most autistic shit in the world. It's like, bro, what the fuck? And this girl mogged me too because she was like 10. She was 2 years older. So they go through puberty earlier. She's like a foot taller than me. And we just like played in the backyard. We just like ran around with sticks and hit each other and shit. Like, why am I doing this? God, fuck, it's so awkward and cringe and weird.
Drugs are often described as being reversible in the sense that normal development resumes once children stop taking them. But this is a dangerous oversimplification.
Don't you think there are inappropriate jokes you can make near kids because you think they're not going to understand? A little bit. It just kind of depends. I mean, it depends on the joke. Obviously, there are certain jokes that you can make around kids that they're not going to understand. But like the girlfriend thing is like a very direct and pointed thing that like people are. There's like a lot of like social expectation that goes into that the kid's probably going to pick up that there's like some weird shit. And kids are already, I'm pretty sure as early as 6 months, like kids start to notice differences between like boys and girls, like at a very early age. So when you like make the differentiation even more noticeable, like people are going to pick up on it.
Though I have to warn you that at the moment, none of those studies are particularly conclusive because the sample...
What do you think about swearing in front of your child? Listen, I don't know. I can't speak for all children. I don't give a fuck. I like swear words, and I will swear in front of my kid. I think if Nathan had started to use swear words, I probably would have stopped. Because I'd be like, okay, this is negatively affecting my kid. But for whatever reason, he seemed to have a good understanding of like, these are adult words. I guess if you want to use them, we can.
Imagine people
don't use
saying
them.
that same joke, but about 2 boys.
True. Don't
Makes
use
it
them.
easier to understand what you're trying to say.
True. Don't use them in inappropriate. Nathan's never gotten in trouble for like cussing at school or cussing ever. I don't know if I've ever heard him cuss, but it seems like I'm able to cuss around him and he doesn't care as much. So I don't know why. But if he started cussing a lot, I'd be like, okay, well, we're gonna stop this, you know.
The effects of
Why would you want to make
hormone
inappropriate
therapy on
jokes around your kids? That's weird to me.
I mean, it depends on the dynamic of the people. It might be adults that regularly make inappropriate jokes. I would say probably the most inappropriate jokes that end up getting made around kids are usually going to be like double entendres. Like a kid might say something and not realize it as a sexual connotation, and like 2 parents might laugh about it. It'll usually be stuff like that. You're not usually like making full on like fucking deep throat jokes around your kid. It'll be like you're. Like a kid might like get into a car and be like, "Hey mom, did dad come today?" And like mom and dad like might laugh at each other. That would be like a joke, like a dirty joke you make around a kid because the kid like doesn't realize what they're saying. But you're not gonna be like, yeah, you're not gonna be making full on like crazy jokes on your kid, obviously.
are presently unclear. Does it benefit the well-being of transgender people? Just a few months ago, a team of American researchers published the results of a study on gender-affirming hormone therapy in adolescents. They followed 315 transgender and non-binary participants aged 12 to 20.
I don't think teen girls experience dysphoria. They're uncomfortable with being objectified as women, while trans men are uncomfortable with being perceived as female altogether.
was a pussy. Also mute dodos you fuck.
Similar but not the same, right? I don't know. I've never gone through female puberty, so I can't. It's hard for me to have like a strong opinion on it. But like from what I've heard from women is that like sometimes going through puberty as a woman, you kind of like they completely just start to hate your body. Like you just fucking hate everything about your body, and you like want to go back, and it's just like the whole process.
You
can
mean
be, like,
ask
very
my dad if you
uncomfortable at
sleep with
times.
men? You're very handsome, by the way.
Thanks. How's your mom? But also, what do I know? I'm not a fucking woman. I never.
For 2 years. In the abstract, they claim they found an increase in reported appearance congruence, that is, how well the participants felt their gender aligned with their appearance, positive affect, and life satisfaction. They also found a decrease of depression and anxiety symptoms. These decreases are statistically significant, but that doesn't mean they're large. Life satisfaction, for example, increased by 2.3 points per year on a 100-point scale, and depression scores decreased by 1.3 points per year.
Remember, statistically significant just means that we can say with a high level of confidence there is an effect, right? So for instance, people mix this up a lot. People think statistically significant, wow, they mean significant result, right? We can get a high degree of confidence, for instance, that second-born children are statistically significantly more intelligent than first-born children, right? But it could just be an effect of like it could just be one. The IQ point difference could be one, right? Now we can say, but we can measure this with high precision and say theoretically, right? Okay, there is a statistically significant increase in IQ between a second child and a first child. That doesn't mean a lot. That just means that with a high degree of certainty, we can say there is a difference, but the effect could still be very, very, very small. Right.
On a 63-point scale. You might say that's better than nothing, but these numbers in and of themselves don't tell you anything because the study didn't have a control group. Many previous studies have found that life satisfaction in this age group on average declines, which makes you think they either had a non-representative sample to begin with, or the fact of being treated itself had a positive effect. If you look closer at their data, it also turns out that the researchers only saw the psychological improvements for anxiety, depression, and life satisfaction among those designed female at birth, but not among those designed male at birth, a fact that, interestingly enough, isn't mentioned in the abstract. The authors speculate that the reason may be that they only followed the participants for 2 years, but it usually takes longer for trans girls to grow breasts of a decent size. So maybe it just takes longer for the benefits to become apparent. They also point out that social acceptance of trans women and trans men is different. Maybe that's the right explanation, or maybe not. Another issue pointed out by Jesse Singer is that the variables analyzed in the paper are not those they'd said they'd analyze in the pre-registered protocol. This means they had an opportunity to cherry-pick their results, which...
That's really scary and probably not good. Oh God, how to explain this? Fuck, I should have a researcher in here for this. When you set out to do a study, you should have in mind the variables you want to compare and what you want to look for. But you have to be very, very, very careful about, like, let's say you do a study, you try to measure two things and it's not working. If you go back and you start digging through your data looking for anything that might be interesting, then oftentimes it's easy to like fabricate like, oh my God, well, I just noticed this thing. There's a more statistically important reason why that is the case. And it has to do with computing, like, oh God, I'm not gonna be able to explain it because I don't even fully understand. Well, I just know you can't do that. You shouldn't. Am I talking about p hacking, where like when you calculate a p-value, that doesn't mean you can go back in and do it over and over and over again with the same calculation or something, but you would have to recalculate it for every single, like, just don't do that. You can't do that. It's not good to do that. That's all I'll say. Okay, I can't explain it any better because I don't understand it better. I just know you're not supposed to do that.
Makes their measure of statistical significance.
Who joined? Oh, it's
it
Abby.
just sounded like you wanted help explaining p-hacking.
Yeah, go for it. Explain that.
Yeah. All right. So p-hacking is when so there's what a p-value is the probability that we would expect results at least this extreme, assuming our model assumptions are correct. So there's and that's per test. So each test gives you, let's say, a 0.5. There's a 5% probability where you put your cutoff at your threshold for statistical significance. You can imagine if you were to run that test over and over and over again, with different variables, you're going to eventually hit one by chance that's going to cross that threshold, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the classic example is with like jelly beans, right? Like you'll have jelly beans and you'll look at a given health outcome and nothing turned up. So then you go back, the researchers go back, and then they say, well, let's look at the jelly bean colors. Let's do the same test for yellow jelly beans and green jelly beans and purple jelly beans and red jelly beans. And it turns out that the red jelly beans were associated with just a statistically significant difference in a given health outcome. And then what makes the news article? The news article is like, oh, red jelly beans, my gosh. But really, when you dig through it, it's just, well, there's no correction for this issue of p-hacking. Now, there are ways of addressing that. So first off, you don't want to do this post hoc, and if you do it post hoc, you want to say in research that you've done it post hoc.
Yeah. So I think in relation to, I don't know how much you're watching this, but like this lady is talking about the researchers set out to study one thing and they ended up not finding what they want, but then they went through their same results and then they found something else. And they essentially said like,
yeah,
oh, well, look, yes. So that's kind of like...
She's half parroting. I'm familiar with this, and I'm familiar with the person she's parroting. She's parroting Jesse Signal. So Jesse Signal is a journalist who writes critical pieces about various
trans stuff. Yeah, he's been on stream a couple times. We talked to him.
Yeah. And by the way, there are certain things, and I'm not saying everything he's saying is wrong. He makes some good points. I don't think he's right about everything, and I'm happy. I've been actually trying to talk to him about some of the things he said about the better studies. But anyway, so she's parroting Jesse Signal, and the impression that, based on the way she's saying this, is that the authors just went over and back and just didn't commit to their protocol, and they only analyzed the things, or at least reported the things that looked good. We don't actually know that, and it's unfortunate that we don't know that, but we can't come to that conclusion. There's actually a lot of different possible reasons why certain things are reported and not. One of which is just journal restrictions. Sometimes, like, reviewers or editors of a journal will say, look, we get your protocol. You pre-registered all of these different things, but it's just cluttering up the journal. We only have so many pages where we're going to let you publish. Here are what we believe are the most relevant ones. You're allowed to publish this. If you don't like it, go to another journal. Right. So that's one example where it's, not ideal, but it's not the authors going in and just data dredging. And they haven't shown that that's not the case.
Okay.
There's some other, but yeah, look, I mean, it's unfortunate that the journal doesn't have an explanation if that was the case, but I will tell you that's pretty standard for those explanations to not be there, which is just a broad, unfortunate state of research in general, rather than anything specific to transgender research.
Could the authors just not make that apparent or say something about that?
No, I mean, they can if they wanted to go on record outside of the journal. Yes. Oftentimes they don't want to do that because, well, if they do that, then all of a sudden they'll just, a lot of these authors are not they're not on social media, and then all of a sudden they get a full flood of everything. Well, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Blah, 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 blah. But so here's one thing I'll say. A lot of the criticisms you're going to see, some are good. Some of the criticisms in this video are good. Some of the criticisms are the type of criticisms that it's made to look like it's something unique about transgender research, when really this is just a general overall problem with research in general of this type.
Sure, I run into that a lot when people criticize social sciences and they immediately bring up replication crisis like it's unique to social sciences, when it's something that kind of plagues all peer-reviewed research or whatever.
Yeah, and then it's unfortunate that I think what I consider to be the strongest studies in favor of gender-affirming surgeries are just completely not addressed in the video. I mean, Jesse Signal has one little Reddit thing where he gives a very poor hand-wavy dismissal of it when really it's the strongest study in favor of it.
Sure. I haven't seen. I obviously haven't finished watching this video, but it seems like she's being pretty fair. Like, I don't think it doesn't feel like she's very partisan or.
No. I don't think she's being. I don't think she's being unfair. I just think what she's doing is she's read a bunch of Jesse Signal articles, and she's just. And I think Jesse Signal is not completely unfair either. So I think she's coming off fair because of that. I don't think she's deeply familiar with the literature.
Oh, maybe. Okay. What do you want, Kelly?
Hello.
Hello.
So I don't necessarily think that she's being unfair, but there is a mistake that a lot of people seem to make when they're making these conversations, and it's an oversimplification of the medications that they're talking about. Because puberty blockers, and I've said this before, is a misnomer, right? That's not a class of drugs. It's a lot of drugs under a variety of different classes that all have very different side effects. And even in this conversation, she's accusing drugs of having the negative side effects of all of them being applicable to one, right? So she says, oh, these drugs can cause heart problems and also bone density issues. Well, spironolactone, for example, helps with your heart. It's literally a diuretic. But it can potentially give you bone issues, but she's kind of implying that both of these things can be true at once. And it's
Kelly, when people say puberty blockers, they generally are referring to one class of medication called GnRH agonists.
But that's not all trans people take. Spironolactone is a really common one that trans women take.
For puberty blocking or for gender affirming?
It's for both. It's an anti-androgen.
No, I understand. But when people are specifically talking about blocking puberty, I'm not talking about like medications to affirm one's gender. So I understand spironolactone
permanently banned me from the subreddit. I didn't give a reason.
Yeah, and it's an anti-androgen. The point is that when people
I
are
probably banned you then.
about causing bone density issues, which spironolactone is one that can do that. They're also conflating heart issues with that too, even though it's a diuretic that literally helps your heart.
No, I understand. I'm just making the point that when people talk about puberty blockers specifically, not gender affirming hormone therapy, they're not typically including spironolactone as opposed to the main drug class that's being talked about is GnRH agonist.
They should be referring to GRNH if they are talking about GnRH, considering there's like a variety of other drugs in that. And also, additionally, all of these drugs, regardless of which class they are multi-use, right? So it's not like these drugs that only exist for these things.
Yeah, so GnRH agonists. So, yeah, I mean, she could have said GnRH. I mean, she did say specific. If I recall correctly, she did mention certain specific ones.
Right.
But GnRH agonists are used to, block puberty in not just transgender people. It's in precocious puberty as well.
It's used for a variety of other things.
Yeah, they can be used in. They can be used in certain, like in prostate cancer.
Yes.
They can be used, and they're used differently in fertility. And they're not given. They're given in a more pulsatile way instead of in a continuous way. It's a different. But yeah, see, they're used for different purposes. Yes, but
even if we're talking about even if we're only talking about that class of drugs, even within that singular class, there are different side effects, right? So it's like. It's irritating for me when this all gets oversimplified.
I mean, can we, to some extent, like, isn't the simplification going to happen? Advocate, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, for instance, or I'm almost positive I'm not wrong. Like there is no such thing as a drug called chemotherapy, right? Like chemotherapy is usually like a collection of drugs, and there are tons of different regimens of chemotherapy.
Chemo is the treatment. Yeah.
Yeah. So if somebody says like, when chemotherapy can have these side effects, there's probably a ton of drugs that are used broadly speaking under chemotherapy, some of which might even counter some of those exact side effects that are being listed, right? Like I'm sure as part of some regimens, I'm sure you're taking things that are like anti-nausea medication or whatever, but nobody would say, well, you can't say that chemotherapy causes nausea because one of the drugs that are part of the protocol for this particular course of chemotherapy is an anti-nausea drug. Probably like broadly speaking, these are things. My guess is
I agree with that. I think it's fair to say like, okay, well, as a class, chemotherapy, we can say with confidence, chemotherapy drugs, they almost always cause XYZ. And the same thing can be said for GnRH agonists when given in a pulsatile versus continuous manner.
As we've already gone over, even within that class of drugs, there are different side effects to each individual drug. But even then, all right, well, when people are talking too generally, it ends up being very fear-mongery because it ends up looking like all of the drugs under the bracket of puberty blockers.
Well, but what's
causes
what's
all
probably
of the
going to be the
same
case
side
is
effects.
what's probably going to be the case is that's probably true though. What happens is
No.
what's probably true is that if you are on puberty blockers for gender-related reasons, whatever regimen you end up taking is probably going to like adversely affect your bone density or adversely affect these other things that people are talking about when they talk about quote-unquote puberty blockers. Would be my guess.
Well, I specifically came to talk to like the heart issues because people get very scared when you're like, oh, these are gonna fuck up your heart, and it's just
Well, because
stupid.
broadly
Some
speaking,
of them literally help your heart.
but if you were
help.
talking, if you were talking about putting a person on these drugs for gender-affirming care and not for the other ways that they're prescribed, they probably do have detrimental effects on the heart, right? Which is the only thing that really matters.
No, that doesn't make sense. How would a diuretic? What?
Because my guess is for gender-affirming care, you're not just prescribing a diuretic. That would be nonsensical. That's not the only thing you're doing. It's probably in combination with other
it's
drugs and the
not-
full suite of drugs that you get as part of your hormone treatment or gender-affirming care. That suite of drugs probably causes deleterious effects to the heart.
It's a fairly
Or
weak
bone.
diuretic, but it's still a diuretic, and it's an anti-androgen. And as a trans woman, you could just take spironolactone if you wanted to. You would still have to keep an eye on, because the bigger issue actually, other than bone density, is making sure that your potassium levels don't get too high, so you can't be eating
Sad guy.
bananas every day. But like,
But I didn't do nothing.
You
I'm
can
just
get
a little
these things checked.
Kelly, when what
I
when
take
you talk
2
about the heart,
anti-androgens.
No,
that's
I under-
why.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to. When you say this medication causes a heart issue, are you talking about GnRH agonists as a class, or are you talking about spironolactone specifically?
She's
Which
been
is not an
using.
GnRH agonist.
She's been using the term puberty blockers, of which
Right, I
spironolactone
just-
gets included in as a discussion, and she said she conflated all of the side effects. That's why I'm saying that being overgeneralistic is problematic.
I guess I just never.
Destiny, please make the
maybe
joke
this is-
again.
Maybe this is a learning point
The
for
one
me.
where you
I
slept
never
with my mom.
understood spironolactone.
I cannot
as
breathe. It
classically
is so
being
funny.
included as a puberty blocker, as opposed to just a gender-affirming.
It's an anti-androgen.
I know it's an. I understand. Believe me, I understand. It's an anti-androgen. You don't have to say that to me. I prescribe spironolactone
Right.
more times than I can count. I know it's an anti-androgen, but that doesn't make. Not all anti-androgens are puberty blockers.
Well, if you want something to reduce your testosterone levels,
That
then I
doesn't mean
don't.
it's a puberty. That doesn't mean it's.
I-
Not all
it's
things that reduce
considered-
testosterone is a puberty blocker.
It's
Not in the way
often-
GnRH agonists are.
the point. Puberty blockers is a misnomer. That's my issue. That is the entire issue with
In
this
what sense is it a
conversation I
misnomer?
have.
Well, so it seems like a
Because-
puberty
Yeah.
blocker is something that literally blocks all endogenous male hormones, right? Or all
Yeah,
endogenous
like it'll
hormones.
go like your it'll
Yeah,
go. to
whereas
zero,
an
it'll go to
anti-androgen is
zero.
literally just blocking the conversion of testosterone to DHT or whatever.
or at the receptor level, it'll
Yeah.
interfere with it in some degree. But there'll still be you're still going to have a decent amount of androgen activity with even with Spyro. Like there's plenty of time.
Yeah,
you can
like-
take Spyro and it doesn't block puberty.
It's included under this terminology, which is why I think that it's confusing.
Can
That's
you
why
share?
I'm
Can you
having
show
this
me? Well, maybe
conversation.
this is a learning point for me. Can you show me?
I mean,
where-
yeah. If you
Yeah.
Google like medication for trans women, spironolactone's the top. I'm like,
Wait,
Wait, hold on. My medication for trans women, right? Like ibuprofen might be given to trans women. That doesn't necessarily make it a puberty
it's not
blocker.
on there.
But
It's,
wait,
like,
wait, here-
listed under, I
wait,
can
wait,
do
wait,
another
wait,
Google
wait, stop,
search
stop,
if you
stop.
want me to.
Here's the question: if you take spironolactone, is that going to block somebody's puberty?
If you block the
my
effect of
just to be clear, my
androgens,
understanding
yeah,
is
it would.
spironolactone is not an effective.
different.
It's not effective at blocking puberty.
Yeah, I don't think spironolactone will block puberty, so I don't think it's a puberty blocker.
I mean, you wouldn't use it for precocious puberty, and you wouldn't use it in men, obviously, because it
It's
would
not
have
effective in
hormonal
blocking
side
puberty and
effects.
transgender.
I mean,
users.
in women.
I just mean it wouldn't block puberty,
But being
period.
if you're a, never mind, I'm confused. Wait, what did you say?
It wouldn't block puberty.
The point is, these medications are used under that branch of terminology and discussion.
I'm asking you to show me that. Where is it standard terminology to refer to spironolactone as a puberty blocker? I've never heard this.
I can show you multiple places where I've seen it. Also, she's
Yeah,
talking
I'm asking. That's
about-
what I'm asking you.
All right. Well, we can look. What are commonly used medications for transition? You didn't like that search. Do you want me to?
Well,
do something
commonly
else?
used medication for transitions could include puberty blockers and non-puberty blockers, like spironolactone.
Yeah, everyone
Okay,
agrees that
quick
it's a commonly used medication for
Quick
transition.
question: if GnRH is exactly the only thing that we're talking about, and ignoring the fact that different GnRH medications do have different side effects, then why not just say GnRH?
Because it probably sounds different than puberty blocking, and not everybody knows what that means.
Well, again, the reason that puberty blockers is a misnomer because even of GnRH, they have different multi-uses, so they're not just puberty blockers.
Well, but spironolactone doesn't sound like a puberty blocker at all. It just sounds like something that blocks conversion of androgen to or testosterone to dihydro. Or whatever.
It blocks androgens at the receptor level. It doesn't prevent the conversion really. But the point is that it's not.
Oh,
it's
I'm
not
sorry.
something
This
that will
is
block puberty.
different types. I'm sorry. So finasteride apparently blocks.
Yeah,
the conversion.
finasteride and dutasteride would block conversion from testosterone to dihydrotestosterone.
Gotcha. So that's a
Spironolactone,
reductase inhibitor versus the other ones. Okay.
Yeah,
the latter can be
that's a
steroids.
5-AR reduction. Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
But none of those are puberty blockers. Yeah, not finasteride, dutasteride, spironolactone. None of they're anti-androgens, but they're not going to block puberty.
I'm just saying they get included in the conversation.
You keep saying wait, but
If
you keep
they
saying,
didn't, they wouldn't they would call them GnRH, wouldn't they? And even
No,
again, it
it's
doesn't
not
matter
necessary.
because
Okay,
you're
look,
like
we understand what they're
hyper-focusing
as long as we
on
understand what they're.
spironolactone.
I understand what they're talking about when people say puberty blockers. My understanding is the standard way of referring to that is a class of medications known as GnRH agonists, which are used in precocious puberty. They're used in blocking puberty in transgender youth, and they're used in other cases, such as managing prostate cancer in some cases, as well as certain other indications. That's the class we're talking about.
But that's not the class people talk about when they have these conversations, because if they did, it would be a lot more clear. And even then, they need to stop conflating all of the different side effects as being the potential side effects of every single medication under the branch.
On standard usage of those terms, by standard use, I mean within the medical community, my understanding is it's almost always a GnRH agonist, a class of medications. I've never heard spironolactone included as a puberty blocker.
If trans women are taking things like spironolactone or other anti-androgens quite commonly, aren't these side effects going to be considered in these discussions? Of course they are.
They're
but
not,
again,
but that doesn't mean they're puberty blockers. Doesn't mean they're considered as side effects of a puberty blocker.
I'm saying other people include all of these drugs that aren't just GnRHs in these conversations.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not.
Have you noticed the global
contending that
U.S. sterilization
people can
propaganda
include
making the rounds lately?
non-puberty
YT
blocker drugs
channels
as
like the
puberty
During
blockers.
Show
People can
Russian
do all sorts of
propaganda.
things.
Check out
But
the ADV
the
China
point I'm making
podcast,
is that
the
when
Blue
we're
Apartist
talking about
propaganda.
puberty blockers standardly, we're talking about GnRH agonists. We're not talking about spironolactone. And the reason we're not talking about spironolactone is because it does not something that blocks puberty. It uses gender-affirming hormone therapy, sure.
Sure, but
It's
when
not a
we're
puberty
having
blocker.
these conversations, does she ever talk about specifically outside of this any of the classes of drugs and to make things clearer?
Wait, I don't think we need to. What is
conflating the side effects of all of these drugs as being a potential side effects of one single drug that you might personally end up
I think that
taking?
she's no. I don't think anybody thinks of it like that at all. They're just saying that in general, if a trans person goes on quote unquote puberty blockers, here are the likely side effects. And I think insofar as that's said, that's probably true.
But you can't say likely side effects if you don't know what the fucking drugs they're taking are.
He's right.
Yeah, no, of course. What do you mean? It's not like there's a random different treatment of drugs or random prescription of drugs every time somebody goes on puberty blockers, right? There's probably some standard GnRH analog or some bullshit, and there's probably some standard collection of drugs that somebody's given as a male or female to go through.
Okay, so my issue with this is, the lack of clarity ends up being scaremongery.
Wait, okay, hold on. So what part of this is
seem potentially worse than they are? I'm not saying that people are being intentional with
Wait, so the question is, what part of this is untrue scaremongering? What has she said that's untrue, I guess?
Because, well, if she was conflating side effects that wouldn't be the accurate for all of the drugs at once.
Wait, so what is a side effect she gave?
One.
What's a side effect that she gave that somebody going through a course of puberty preventing drugs wouldn't face? What's an example of that? What's one side effect she's given? So the bone density thing.
Yeah, but not all of them are going to be hard on all of the things that she listed.
Okay, like what? Like what's
some
one
of
thing?
them, most of them are going to be hard on at least one of the things she listed.
Well, like
That's
what's one side
true.
effect she listed that's probably not going to apply to most trans people?
Well, I'm having a hard time remembering all of the side effects she was listing, but she when she mentioned heart issues and bone density, that doesn't have to be true.
Okay, but
I mean, there are meta-analyses looking over GnRH agonists, not just one single medication within that class, but broadly, and they do broadly reduce bone density, and there is a link to
Bone density, yes, but like heart issues and all of those meds,
and
no.
cardiovascular. No, but there's
In
a
all of
meta-analysis of
them, no.
cardiovascular. There's a meta-analysis GnRH agonists, and cardiovascular.
When you start to say like in all of these drugs, you're increasing your chance of.
Look, I'm not claiming that there
scared.
couldn't be. Wait, one second. I'm not claiming
I'm
that
just
one
saying.
couldn't. Listen, I'm not claiming that one couldn't have a specific GnRH agonist or invent one or whatnot that wouldn't have this side effect. It's just that broadly speaking, they do have certain side effects.
And again, she didn't say GnRH anyway.
Okay,
But,
I think it's clear that's
there
what she
are
was
other
saying.
drugs too, and I'm just saying anyway.
Okay.
And this also kind of, by conflating all of these things, it doesn't seem to give people the thought that there could be the option to not use, for example, GnRH, but to use the other affirming care that wouldn't have those negative side effects. And I don't really understand why we don't talk about the class of drugs and the drugs specifically, because yeah, GnRH might not be applicable for people, but if we keep just using the fucking word puberty blockers, which just doesn't mean very much, then people won't be able to like consider these as options. They're just going to
She's
get
not
scared.
saying that everyone needs to use a puberty blocker in order to transition. She's just talking about puberty blockers as they're used.
Yeah, but she's talking about the drugs in general. I think she just started to talk about. Did she just start to go into gender-affirming care?
Yeah, but notice how she said gender-affirming care and not puberty blockers now. So she's
But
clear about
I
talking
haven't
about
heard what has she said, or she hasn't said much. We need to watch the video. But I think she only just started that part of the conversation.
wow.
I mean, you can
Why are you
watch. I watched the video.
Why are
I
you
mean, I think
laughing? I'm
she's-
asking a question.
No, I think she's clear about the medications. I've watched the video. I think she's clear
How
about the
can you be clear
medications
about
she's
the
talking about.
medications if you don't name a single one?
Because I have background knowledge about what class of medications are being
But
referred to by
Other
certain
people don't.
Okay,
That's-
maybe other people don't, but I'm saying that I do.
Okay, so she's being clear by not naming a single medication.
She's being clear to a target
Or even
audience
the
that has
class.
background information that understands that when someone says puberty blockers, they're talking about.
You think
GnRH
she's
agonists or
talking
one with-
to people that have extensive knowledge on this subject?
It's the first thing in the Wikipedia. Like you can, anyone who looks up puberty blockers, Wiki will they'll.
No, but you think she's talking to people that already have an extensive knowledge in the subject?
No,
Because
I
it
think
does
I
not
think
sound like
no,
that.
I think our target audience is probably laymen who have done some amount of
But
research.
that's my
on this and are-
problem.
Wait, let me finish. Not just laymen who have done some amount of research on it, who are interested in the topic and are trying to get clarity. And I think those people are
No,
also
they're trying to get clarity by her giving none. That's my point.
I don't think she's giving. All right, look.
I don't feel.
I don't want
motivated.
to belabor it. If we can. I mean, if you want, we can continue, but we can continue watching the video.
I mean, we can agree to disagree. It's fine. Did you want to continue the video? I'm sorry.
Yeah, maybe that'd be good.
My bad. Okay, I will silence myself.
Okay, be careful, guys.
So what do you think? Do you have children in that age group and are worried about them? Are you transgender and see the situation differently? Let me know in the comments.
Wow.
Gender dysphoria, like most questions of mental and physical health, is a sensitive topic. And if you're looking for information online, you sometimes don't want to leave a trail. Our sponsor, NordVPN, can help protect your privacy while you do your
Okay, that's kind of a funny ad plug. Like, are you looking for stuff about trans people? Don't let anybody know. Like,